I knew something was off the moment my daughter-in-law placed the plate in front of me. Everyone else at the table had hot, pink steaks that were still steaming, but mine looked like it had been sitting in a refrigerator all night dry, curled at the edges, completely cold. No one looked at me when she set it down. Not even a polite smile. I sat at the very end of the long dinner table, far away from everyone, as if I was someone they barely knew, not the person who raised half the people in that room. I cut into the meat slowly. It was so tough that my knife made a scraping sound, but no one noticed. They were too busy talking, laughing, and drinking the wine I wasn't offered. Andrew, my only son, laughed too loudly at a joke his wife, Claire, made. It was a strange laugh, thin and forced. When he was small, he used to laugh with his whole chest. His laughter used to fill a room. Now it sounded like he was trying not to bother anyone. "I hope the seasoning isn't too strong for you, Helen," Claire said. She didn't look at me while she spoke. She never did. Her makeup was perfect as always. Not a single hair out of place. But her voice was sharp, like someone checking an item off a list instead of speaking to a real person. "The seasoning is fine," I answered quietly. The steak wasn't the problem. The coldness in the room was worse. Everyone talked about vacations, new house renovations, school programs for the kids, things I knew my money had helped pay for over the years. I never complained. I never asked for anything in return. But tonight, I felt the weight of that truth settle on my chest. My grandson Michael looked at me once. Just a quick glance. He gave me a tiny smile, warm and gentle, before his mother tapped his arm, telling him silently to pay attention to her instead. Even children learn where affection is allowed. Dessert came next. Something shiny and expensive looking. I received my piece last, a slice so small it could have disappeared under a spoon. I didn't say a word. I had learned long ago that honesty only wastes breath when people have no interest in hearing it. When dinner ended, Andrew walked me to the door. Or rather, he walked while staring at his phone. "Drive safe, Mom," he said without looking up. "I always do," I replied. The cool night air outside felt kinder than their warm dining room. When I reached my small old car, I sat for a moment and looked back at the glowing windows of their house. The lights flickered like eyes that had already forgotten I was there. And in that quiet moment, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not painfully, just enough for me to realize something in my life had finally reached its limit. But I didn't know then that this small crack would lead to a decision that changed everything. Asterisk. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Maybe it was the uncomfortable dinner that still sat heavy in my mind, or maybe it was the quiet feeling inside me that something needed to change. I sat up slowly, letting the cool air of the house settle around me. This old place had been my home for 40 years. Every wall, every shelf, every picture had a story. Unlike the people at last night's dinner, my home never made me feel unwanted. I made myself tea and sat by the window, watching the sun rise behind the branches of the maple tree. In that quiet moment, memories began to come back, little things I had ignored over the past months. Like the time Claire accidentally forgot to invite me to Michael's school play. Or when Andrew told me maybe I didn't need to come by so often, because the kids get too excited. How Claire reminded me again and again that I should slow down because older people need to rest. I wasn't sick. I wasn't confused. I wasn't weak. But I could feel myself being slowly pushed to the edge of their lives. And last night's dinner. Yes, that was the moment I realized I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being sensitive. Something had shifted. I finished my tea and walked to my small desk in the living room. I kept a notebook there, plain blue with pages barely touched. I opened it and wrote the date at the top. Things I've noticed. The first line came easily. Dinner seat changed to far end of table. Then another. Cold food served only to me. Another. No invitation to school event. And another. Andrew always distracted when speaking to me. Soon the page was full. I stared at the list. Seeing everything written down made my hands tremble. Not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't just one bad dinner. It was a pattern. When the phone rang, I already knew who it was. Andrew always called on Saturday mornings. "Hi, Mom," he said quickly, like he was late for something. "We're headed out today, so don't drop by. The kids have activities." "Of course," I said, keeping my voice even. "And Mom, maybe you should think about hiring someone to help you at home. You know, with errands and driving." I froze. There it was again, the suggestion that I couldn't take care of myself. "I'm managing fine," I answered. "Yeah, but just think about it," he said in that calm, heavy tone people use when pretending they know what's best for you. When the call ended, I stared at my notebook again. Something had to change. I had to understand what was really happening, and why. I closed the book, took a deep breath and grabbed my keys. I was going to visit someone who always gave me honest advice, someone I should have talked to much earlier. My old friend Joan. What Joan told me that afternoon didn't just open my eyes. It pushed me toward a decision I never expected to make. Joan lived only 10 minutes away, in a cozy little house with yellow curtains and a garden she cared for like it was her life's pride. She had been my friend for almost 20 years. We met at a library book club and stayed close ever since. Unlike my family, Joan never made me feel like I was too old or too slow. She treated me like a person, like someone whose thoughts mattered. When she opened the door, her face brightened. Helen! What a lovely surprise. Come in, come in. I stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of lavender and fresh bread. Her home always felt warm, like a place where worries became lighter the moment you entered. What brings you here so early? Joan asked, pouring tea before I even sat down. I didn't answer right away. I looked around her living room, the knitting basket, the soft lighting, the comfortable chairs. Then I finally said, Joan, I think something is happening with Andrew and Claire. Her eyebrows rose. What do you mean happening? So I told her everything. The cold food, the far end of the table, the missing invitations, the comments about my age, the suggestion to hire someone to help me, and last night's strange feeling that I wasn't part of the family anymore. Joan listened without interrupting. She nodded slowly, her face tightening with concern. When I finished, she set her teacup down gently. Helen, this isn't the first time you've mentioned these little things. But now they're not little anymore. I swallowed. Do you think they're pushing me away? I don't think they're pushing, Joan said softly. I think they're moving you aside. Her words stung, but they made something click inside me. I had been trying so hard to make excuses. Maybe they were busy, maybe they were tired, maybe I was imagining things. But hearing Joan say it out loud made it impossible to hide from the truth. Why would they do that? I whispered. Why would they do that? I whispered. Joan looked at me with gentle seriousness. Sometimes people get comfortable receiving help, Helen. Too comfortable. And when they start seeing someone not as a parent but as a resource, that's when the trouble begins. I stared at her, confused. Resource? Helen dear, have you checked your finances recently? Your accounts? Anything that shows where your money is going? I blinked at her, surprised. No, I haven't checked anything in months. Joan nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. Maybe it's time. Her words brought a cold wave over me. I had trusted Andrew with small things over the years, paying bills online, helping with paperwork when my eyesight was tired. I never imagined that trust could turn into something risky. Joan reached across the table and gently touched my hand. I'm not saying anything has happened, but you need to know for sure. You deserve to feel safe in your own life. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. Maybe Joan was right. Maybe I needed to start checking instead of assuming. Maybe I needed to open my eyes completely. And that meant one thing. It was time to go to the bank. What I discovered at the bank didn't just worry me. It changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. The bank was quiet when I arrived. Only a few people sat in the waiting area, and soft music played in the background. I walked to the counter and smiled politely at the young woman behind the desk. Good morning, I said. I'd like to check a few things on my account. She nodded cheerfully. Of course, ma'am. Let me pull up your information. I handed her my ID. As she typed, I felt my hands grow a little cold. I wasn't nervous before, but now something inside me felt unsettled. Joan's words kept echoing. Check your finances. The woman looked at the screen and her smile slowly faded. Not in a dramatic way, but in a confused way, like something wasn't matching what she expected. Is something wrong? I asked. Oh, it's nothing, she said quickly. Just give me a moment. She clicked a few more things on her computer, her eyebrows pulling together. Then she stood up. Let me get my manager. It'll just be a minute. A minute felt like an hour. When the manager finally came, he spoke gently, like someone preparing to give difficult news. Mrs. Harper, we noticed several recent requests linked to your account, he began. Requests? I repeated. What kind of requests? For account access changes, he said carefully. Someone wanted to update permissions, add a secondary user, and modify certain settings. My heart thumped. Who requested that? He hesitated. You didn't submit any of those requests? No, I said firmly. I didn't request anything. The manager nodded slowly. The requests didn't go through because we needed your physical signature to confirm them. But someone tried more than once. My mouth went dry. Do you see a name? Who tried to make the changes? He glanced at the screen. The online forms were filled out under the name. Andrew Harper. My son. For a moment, everything around me felt strangely quiet. I thought I had misheard. I shook my head. That must be a mistake, I said. Maybe it autofilled. Maybe. But the manager gently cut me off. Mrs. Harper, he used his own email. His own phone number. It wasn't an accident. I sat down slowly. The chair felt hard. My chest felt even harder. I wanted to defend him. I wanted to find some explanation that made sense. But my mind went back to little moments. The cold food, the missing invitations, the distant conversations. And suddenly all those things seemed bigger. The manager continued. We didn't approve anything, but we thought you should know. This is your account and you have full control. No changes can be made without you being present. I nodded numbly. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. After signing a few security updates to protect my account, I left the bank with shaky hands. Outside, the sky looked different, too bright, too empty. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel. A strange mixture of sadness and strength grew inside me. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being dramatic. Something real was happening, and it involved my own child. I took a deep breath. I knew what I had to do next. I needed help, someone professional, someone who understood situations like this. I needed a lawyer. But the lawyer I met didn't just give me advice. She revealed a possibility that shook me to my core. The law office was quiet and bright, with tall windows and shelves filled with thick books. I had never been to a lawyer before, not for anything serious at least. My hands felt cold as I sat in the waiting area, holding my purse in my lap. A woman in a navy suit approached me with a warm smile. Mrs. Harper? I'm Ms. Grant. Please come in. Her office looked calm and organized. There were 2 chairs in front of her desk, and she waited until I sat before taking her own seat. How can I help you today? She asked gently. I took a deep breath. I think my son might be trying to take control of my bank accounts. And maybe more. She didn't seem shocked. Instead, she nodded slowly, encouraging me to continue. I told her everything. About the strange comments. About the cold treatment at dinner. About the requests at the bank. About Joan's worries. When I finished, Miss Grant folded her hands on the desk. Helen, she said softly, what you're describing is something we see more often than people realize. My heart sank. You mean this happens to other people? Yes. Especially older adults who trust their family. Sometimes the family thinks they're helping. Other times they want control of property or money. Her words felt heavy but not cruel. Just honest. I'm not careless with my life, I said quietly. I'm not confused or unable to think. I can see that, Miss Grant replied. You're completely capable. That's exactly why you came here, because you know something isn't right. I nodded. What can I do? Well, she said, turning a notepad toward me, you have several options. But first, I need to ask something important. She looked directly into my eyes. Do you feel pressured by your son to give up control of your home or finances? Yes, I admitted. The word came out small but clear. I didn't want to believe it. But now yes. Ms. Grant sighed gently. Then we should take steps to protect you. Nothing extreme. Just enough to make sure no one can force you to sign anything or make changes behind your back. My chest tightened. Like what? She began listing things. Stronger account protections, updated documents, legal boundaries, permissions, rights I still fully held. But one phrase stood out more than the others. Power of attorney. I swallowed. Is that what my son was trying to get? It's possible, she said carefully. If he gains access without your consent, he could make financial decisions for you. I don't want that, I said firmly. And you don't have to allow it, she confirmed. As long as your mind is clear. And it is, everything stays under your control. I felt relief but also fear. Fear that things between me and Andrew had gone further than I realized. Ms. Grant leaned forward slightly. Helen, do you want us to put legal protections in place starting today? I closed my eyes for a moment, thinking of my home, my savings, my independence. Thinking of the cold steak. Thinking of the bank. Then I opened my eyes and nodded. Yes, I said. Please help me. Ms. Grant smiled softly. We will. You're doing the right thing. I left the office feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. Protected but shaken. Safe but hurt. And yet, one thought kept repeating in my mind. If Andrew tried once, he might try again. I didn't know it yet, but the very next day, something happened at my house that proved just how right I was. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I had barely slept, thinking about everything Ms. Grant told me. Her words kept repeating in my head, especially the part about protection. As long as your mind is clear, you stay in control. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in the living room. My house felt different, safer in a strange way, but also quieter than ever. It was the quiet that made you think too much. Around 10 o'clock, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, a nervous feeling rose in my chest. When I opened the door, I saw something I never expected. Andrew and Claire stood there. Andrew looked tense. Claire looked annoyed. Not a good combination. "Mom," Andrew said quickly, without even giving me a smile. "We need to talk." I stepped aside because I didn't want a scene outside my house. They walked in like they owned the place, moving straight to the kitchen table. I followed slowly, my heart beating harder with each step. "Is everything okay?" I asked carefully. Andrew sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "We heard you went to the bank yesterday." My breath caught. "Yes, I did." "And you changed some things?" he asked, his voice tight. "I protected my account," I said simply. Claire crossed her arms. "Why would you do that?" "Honestly, Helen, it makes things so difficult. We were trying to help you." There was that word again. Help. A word that felt less like kindness and more like pressure. "I never asked for help with my accounts," I replied calmly. Andrew leaned forward. "Mom, you know you're getting older. It's normal to let someone handle things." "I am perfectly able to handle my own life," I interrupted, keeping my voice steady. Claire gave a small, sharp laugh. "Really? Because you seem confused lately." My chest tightened. "I am not confused." "Well," Claire said, shrugging, "people your age sometimes don't notice changes in themselves." "Well," Claire said, shrugging, "people your age sometimes don't notice changes in themselves." Something inside me snapped, not loudly but clearly. I stood a little straighter. "I notice everything," I said firmly. Andrew's face changed. He looked frustrated, almost angry. "Mom, we were going to put my name on your account so things would be easier if something happened to you." "I didn't agree to that," I replied. "That's why we came," Claire said. "We brought the papers again." She pulled a brown folder out of her bag and placed it on the table. "Just sign," Andrew said softly. "It's for your own good." My heart pounded. The folder looked harmless, but I felt danger in it. Quiet, polite, hidden danger. I stepped back. "I'm not signing anything today." Andrew frowned. "Mom, why are you making this so hard?" "Because," I said, swallowing hard, "I know what these papers are." A long silence filled the room. Then Claire whispered, "So that's why you saw a lawyer." My eyes widened. "How did you know?" She didn't answer. But in that moment I realized something chilling. They were watching me more closely than I realized. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not signing. Not now. Not ever. Please leave." Andrew stared at me for a long moment, disappointment and something darker in his eyes. Then he stood up. "Fine." They left without another word. When the door closed behind them, I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger and clarity. They weren't going to stop. Not on their own. That night someone came to my house again. And this time they didn't knock. That night, the house felt heavier than usual. Every shadow looked longer. Every creak sounded sharper. I tried to read a book, but the words kept slipping away from me. My mind kept replaying the moment Andrew and Claire placed that folder on my kitchen table. The way they spoke to me like I had no choices. The way Claire smirked when she mentioned the lawyer. I felt angry but also deeply sad. How did things reach this point? How did my own child start treating me like a problem instead of a person? By 10 o'clock, I was finally tired enough to try sleeping. I turned off the lights and went to bed, pulling the blanket up around my shoulders. The room was quiet, peaceful, almost warm. Until I heard it. A soft sound. A click. Like someone lifting the latch on my back door. My eyes flew open. For a moment I thought I imagined it. But then I heard another noise, slow, careful footsteps on the wooden floor of my kitchen. My heart raced, but I didn't move. I lay completely still, listening. Another step. Then another. Someone was inside my house. I sat up slowly, my breath shaking. The hallway light was off, so the only thing I could see was a faint outline of the doorway. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but stopped when I heard a low whisper. A voice I recognized. Andrew. He wasn't calling my name. He wasn't checking if I was okay. He was speaking quietly into his phone, saying something I couldn't fully hear. I felt cold all over. I got out of bed quietly and stepped just close enough to the hallway to listen. "Yeah," Andrew whispered. "I'm inside." "No, she's sleeping." "I'll get the papers." "No, she won't wake up." "Just be ready." The words hit me like a bucket of ice. He wasn't there to talk. He wasn't there because he was worried. He was there to take something. Maybe the documents. Maybe my personal files. Maybe more. I stepped back into my room and quietly closed the door. My hands trembled as I finally picked up my phone and dialed someone I never thought I'd call so late. Ms. Grant. She answered on the second ring, her voice sleepy but alert. Mrs. Harper? Is everything okay? No, I whispered, trying not to cry. My son is inside my home right now. He came in without asking. I heard him say he wants to take my papers. Her tone changed instantly. She became calm, firm, focused. Helen, listen to me carefully. Lock your bedroom door, stay inside, and do not confront him. I will call the police right now. I did exactly what she said. I locked the door and stood back, my phone pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. Within a few minutes, there were loud knocks on the front door. Andrew's voice suddenly panicked. The footsteps hurried. Then silence. I stayed frozen in place, shaking. Ms. Grant stayed on the phone with me until I heard the officers calling my name. I unlocked my door and walked out slowly, my whole body unsteady. One of the officers guided me to the living room and sat me down. Another officer searched the house. But Andrew was gone. The next day, everything changed, including the way the law looked at what my son had been doing all along. The morning after the police came, the house felt strangely calm, but not in a comforting way. It was the kind of calm that appears after a storm, when nothing looks damaged on the outside, but everything inside feels shaken. I sat at the kitchen table with a blanket around my shoulders, waiting for Ms. Grant to arrive. She said she'd come early to help me understand what would happen next. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time the wind touched the window, I jumped. Every time the floor made a small sound, my heart tightened. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to see Ms. Grant standing there with a folder tucked under her arm and a serious but kind look on her face. Helen, may I come in? Please, I said, stepping aside. She sat with me at the kitchen table. I noticed she didn't look surprised, more prepared. First, she said, are you okay? Physically? Emotionally? I nodded, though I wasn't sure the second part was completely true. Helen, she continued, last night wasn't a misunderstanding. What happened was a very serious boundary violation. Entering your home without permission is not something we can ignore. I looked down at my hands. I keep thinking he's my son. I know, she said gently, but your relationship doesn't erase what he did. Family or not, no one is allowed to break into your home or try to take your private documents. Her words were firm but caring. It made me feel both protected and heartbroken. One of the police officers from last night had given me a case number and a card. Ms. Grant looked it over. They put a note saying he left quickly when they knocked, she explained, and that there was no confrontation. That's good. But they also wrote that he wasn't supposed to be here, and that he didn't have your permission to enter. I took a shaky breath. What happens now? Now, Ms. Grant said, we put legal protection in place. Not to punish him but to protect you. We make sure no one can try to take control of your home, your bank accounts, or your personal decisions. She opened the folder she brought and slid a few documents toward me, not to sign but to explain. Helen, as long as you are aware, thinking clearly and managing your own life, the law is on your side. You have every right to protect your independence. I felt tears building, but I blinked them back. I never thought my son would try something like this. Ms. Grant gave a slow nod. People change. Or sometimes people show a side we refuse to see. But what matters now is your safety. There was a long moment of silence. Not heavy, just clear. What do I need to do? I asked finally. We'll file paperwork today, Ms. Grant said. We'll strengthen your protections and notify the appropriate offices. And if your son tries anything again, the law will step in faster than last night. I nodded. I didn't feel brave, but I felt steady. As she packed her things, she paused and looked at me carefully. Helen, I need to ask one last question. I lifted my eyes. Are you ready for what might come next? I didn't know the full answer, but I knew I wasn't going to let fear guide me anymore. Yes, I said quietly. I am. But the next phone call I received, from someone I never expected, would test that strength in a whole new way. That afternoon, after Ms. Grant left, I tried to rest. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. I kept thinking about Andrew. His voice whispering in my kitchen, the sound of his footsteps, the way he slipped out before the police entered. A part of me still hoped he would realize what he had done and apologize. A bigger part of me knew that was unlikely. I made myself some soup and had just sat down when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be him. But when I looked at the caller ID, my stomach dropped for a different reason. It wasn't Andrew. It was Claire. I hesitated for a long moment, then answered. Hello. I said, my voice careful. Helen, Claire said quickly, her tone sharper than usual. What exactly happened last night? Andrew came home upset. I felt a cold wave move down my spine. He hadn't told her the truth. Of course he hadn't. He came into my home without permission, I said calmly. I heard him speaking on the phone. He was trying to take my documents. Claire scoffed. An angry, dismissive sound. That's ridiculous. Andrew would never do something like that. You must have misunderstood. I didn't, I said firmly. Well, she snapped. You calling the police was unnecessary. You embarrassed him. You embarrassed us. Her words cut more deeply than I expected. I didn't call them. Miss Grant did. Because I was afraid. Claire went silent for a second, then sighed like I was a problem she didn't have time for. Helen, you're being dramatic. Andrew only wanted to look at those papers again. He thought you might need help. Claire, I said gently but strongly, help does not come through the back door at night. Her silence this time was longer. Helen, she finally said, her voice lower now, you're making everything harder. If you keep acting like this, things will get very complicated for all of us. Her words weren't loud, but they carried a clear warning, one that made the hair on my arms rise. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. It means, she said, choosing her words slowly, if you create too much trouble, the family might have to talk about other options. My heart thumped. What options? Like assessing whether you're able to manage things on your own anymore. There it was. The threat. Soft but dangerous. I felt myself straighten up in my chair. My voice became steady. Claire, I take care of myself every day. I pay my bills, I cook my meals, I keep my home clean, and I remember everything. I don't need anyone deciding my life for me. She clicked her tongue impatiently. We're just trying to help, she repeated, tired and annoyed. But if you keep going down this legal road, don't blame us for responding. Before I could reply, she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my fingers trembling. Not from fear, but from the sharp clarity that settled inside me. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. A plan that started gently, politely, quietly, until it reached my own home at night. And now they knew I wasn't going to let them win. I put the phone down and whispered to myself, I need proof. I need to protect myself completely. And when I met with Ms. Grant the next morning, she showed me something that proved I wasn't just protecting myself. I was fighting a battle I didn't know had already begun. The next morning I met Ms. Grant at her office again. She had asked me to come in early, saying there were important updates. The moment I stepped inside, I could tell something was different. Her expression wasn't calm and steady like before. It was serious, focused, almost protective. Helen, she said, standing up as I entered. Come sit. There's something you need to see. My hands felt cold again, just like the day at the bank. I sat down across from her, and she opened a new folder, one I hadn't seen before. I asked one of my associates to do some checking, she explained, just to see if anything else was happening around your name or your property. My heartbeat slowed and quickened at the same time. What did you find? Ms. Grant slid a paper toward me. Your son contacted a real estate agency last week. My breath caught. A real estate agency? Yes. He asked about the value of your home. He also asked how the selling process would work if the owner was no longer able to manage decisions. The world seemed to tilt slightly, but I kept my face steady. He said that. He did, Ms. Grant confirmed. And he used his full name. We have the call record. I stared at the paper, reading the words over and over, each one sharper than the last. Andrew was planning ahead, planning for a future where I didn't have control, because he planned to take it away. He was preparing, I whispered, even before the bank, before the papers, before last night. Ms. Grant nodded gently. Helen, this wasn't sudden. He has been building this slowly, carefully. It hurt. It hurt more than I expected. Not the legal part. Not the money. But the truth that my own child was making plans for a life where I wasn't fully me. What do I do now? I asked softly. How do I stop this? Ms. Grant leaned forward. You already did. The moment you came here. The moment you didn't sign anything. The moment you protected your accounts. She pulled out another set of documents. Now we make everything official. We file protections with the court. We set clear boundaries. And we make sure no one can question your ability to make decisions. I looked up. Will this make things worse with Andrew? Her answer was gentle but honest. It might. But protecting yourself is not wrong. And it is not your job to carry his feelings when he is risking your safety. I wiped a small tear from the corner of my eye. I never thought I'd be in this position. No one ever does, she said softly. But you are handling it with more strength than you realize. We spent the next hour reviewing papers. Nothing scary, nothing confusing. Just protections, boundaries, safety measures. My rights written clearly. When we finished, Ms. Grant closed the folder. Helen, from this moment forward you are safe. No one can take your home. No one can access your accounts. No one can make decisions for you. A long shaky breath left my body. For the first time in weeks I felt the ground beneath me again. But then Ms. Grant added one more thing. Something that made my heart drop all over again. There is one more person we need to speak with. I frowned. Who? She held my gaze carefully. Your grandson. Because what he knew, and what he'd seen would change everything I believed about my family.